Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and what I normally do is when I receive a message on WhatsApp more than 3 times, I decide to do a video on it. And today I received 4 messages about the 12-year-old that was handcuffed by police for playing with a stop sign. So I've got quite a bit to say, so I've written my notes, so I'm going to read it just to make it easier and so I can keep within my 10 minutes. So forgive the lack of eye contact if that is the case. So when I received at least 3 messages on the same topic, I decided to do a video on it, which I just said. I found myself thinking about more than just the incident itself. I started thinking about how we make split decisions, how we judge risk and how we see children, and how can communities build trust in police when things like this go on. From what has been reported, the boy was allegedly playing with an abandoned stop sign. Police suspected that he may have stolen it and searched him for offensive weapons that could have been used to remove it. During that encounter, he was handcuffed. His mother later complained that the response was disproportionate and that excessive force had been used. She said her son was not violent and was not trying to run away. Most people would probably agree that the police have a right to investigate something like this. A stop sign is public property. If a sign has been removed from its proper place, that could create a danger for road users. It is understandable that officers would want to find out how the boy came in possession of it. The question that many people are asking, though, is not whether the police should have investigated. The question is whether handcuffing a 12-year-old child was necessary. Handcuffs are not just another piece of police equipment. They are a form of force, even when no injury occurs. Being handcuffed can be upsetting and intimidating for an adult, let alone a child. Police officers are allowed to use handcuffs in certain situations. They don't always have to wait until someone becomes violent. They may use them if they believe there is a risk of escape, resistance or harm. However, the important principle is not that force should be necessary and proportionate to the circumstance. The most important principle is that force should be necessary and proportionate to the circumstances. This is where many people are struggling with what happened. If a child is calm, cooperative and not attempting to leave, some people will naturally question why handcuffs were needed. They may wonder whether officers could have spoken to him, asked questions and carried out their inquiries without placing him in restraints. They may also ask whether the same response would have been used if the situation involved a different child in different circumstances. The fact that the boy was only 12 years old is important. Children are different from adults. They are still developing. They often do not fully understand what is happening in stressful situations. Encounters with the police can leave a lasting impression. That is why many people believe that when force is used against a child, there should be a very clear reason for doing so. There is another part of this story that helps explain why the reaction has been so strong. The boy is black. For many people, this means that the incident is not viewed in isolation. It is seen as part of a much wider conversation about race and policing in Britain. For many years, official figures have shown that black people are stopped and searched by police at higher rates than white people. There are ongoing debates about why those differences exist and what they mean, but the figures themselves have been discussed for decades. As a result, there are communities where trust in policing have been affected by a feeling that they receive greater scrutiny or harsher treatment. This does not mean that every police officer is biased. It does not mean that every encounter involving a black person is motivated by discrimination. However, it does mean that when incidents like this occur, people often view them through the lens of previous experiences and wider concerns. When members of the public hear that a black 12-year-old boy was handcuffed while being investigated over a stop sign, some immediately ask whether the same thing would have happened if the child had been from a different background, or should I say a non-black background. Whether that question can be answered or not is one that many people genuinely ask because of the history surrounding these issues. This is why community reaction is often about more than the legal powers available to the police officers. People are also thinking about fairness, judgment and trust. They are asking whether the response matched the situation and whether every child would have been treated the same way. Another interesting part of this is concerns the age and appearance. Sometimes when questions are raised about how a child was treated, people suggest that officers believed the child was older than they actually were. On the surface, that may sound like a reasonable explanation. After all, children develop at different rates. Some 12-year-olds can appear older than their age. The problem is that human beings are not particularly good at estimating age, especially non-white, especially when you're not the same race as the person as the suspect. Most of us, and even when you are, people still, even black people, they still misjudge my age. And most of us have guessed somebody's age incorrectly. At some point, we often rely on height, build, clothing, behaviour, or other visual clues. Those clues can be misleading. If important decisions are based on assumptions about age, mistakes can happen. This concern becomes even more relevant when we look beyond this particular case to another video I did earlier. Recently, there's been discussions about the use of artificial intelligence to help estimate the age of asylum seekers who arrive without documentation. Supporters say technology may improve greater consistency than individual human judgment. Critics worry that computers may simply repeat the same errors and assumptions that people already make. After all, artificial intelligence learns from the information created and collected by human beings. If the underlying data contains mistakes, the technology will inherit some of those mistakes or may inherit some of them. A computer may be able to process large amounts of information, but that does not mean it's always right. The connection between these issues is simple. Whether the judgment comes from a person or a machine, important decisions should not rest entirely on assumption about how old somebody looks. When we think about this case, there are still facts that the public may not know. There may be body-worn camera footage, there may be witness statements, there may be information available to officers that have not yet been made public. Any investigation will need to consider all of that evidence carefully. It is entirely possible that investigators could conclude that officers acted within their legal powers. It is also possible that people may still question whether the response was the best one available. Those are not the same things. Something can be lawful while still raising concerns about judgment, proportionality, and public confidence. For me, this is why the story has attracted attention. It touches on several important questions at the same time. How should police interact with children? When is force truly necessary? How much do assumptions influence decisions? How should institutions respond when sections of the community already feel a lack of trust? And how do we make sure that fairness is not just something that exists on paper, but something people can actually see and experience? The discussion is about a stop sign, but is also about more than a stop sign. It is about recognising that children deserve special consideration, that appearances can sometimes be misleading, and that trust once damaged can be difficult to rebuild. Whatever conclusion is eventually reached, this case reminds us that public confidence depends not only on whether power is used lawfully, but also on whether it is used wisely, carefully, and in a way that people believe is fair. That is why this incident has resonated with so many people, and why the conversation surrounding it is likely to continue long after the immediate facts have been established. And so I had to do this video because when we think about use of force, like I say, I'm on the police panel, so I am the use of force police panel. So I'm one of those people who actually scrutinise the police to see whether or not force was excessive, but without actually seeing the video on how it happened and what took place and the size of the boy and whether or not it's proportional or not. It's a totally different ball game because you need to have all the facts in front of you. And of course I don't. I have a news item and, some people who are actually absolutely horrified that a 12-year-old could have been handcuffed. I just hope that mentally he's okay. I hope that everything gets sorted out. And yeah, that's all I've got to say on this one. You take care.